So I'll show you how QTP fetches the data from Excel sheet directly without involving a data table in between. So in order for QTP to fetch the data directly from the Excel sheet, it needs to automate the Excel sheet. So earlier we had done automation object model. If you remember, we are treating QuickTest Professional as a collection of objects in hierarchy level. For example, starting with QuickTest, it has different buttons inside, and within that button, inside automation, you'll see we have record and run settings. So we can consider each of this as objects, and we can automate them if we consider these the application as a set of objects. So in same way, in order to perform operation on Excel sheet, we'll consider Excel as a collection of objects in hierarchy level. So before starting with with an example wherein we'll use QTP to fetch the values from an Excel sheet, I'll show you what is the hierarchy which we will follow. Now this is an Excel sheet from where I want to fetch my value. So how QTP treats this as this is the file which we have saved it in a particular location is the workbook, and this workbook has different sheets within it. So if you see at the hierarchy level, the first is workbook, and below that comes sheet. So once we are inside the sheet, what do you see? We have different cells inside it. Okay, so the next hierarchy is cells. So once you know the hierarchy, we have to just create the objects for the different objects in the hierarchy, and using that we can perform the operations on the Excel. So to begin with, what we'll do is, like we created an object for QuickTest Professional, same way we have to create an object for Excel using set say Excel. Excel is the name of my object, equal to create object. So using this code, I'm creating my Excel dot application. So if you remember, for automation object model, we used set object equal to create object, QuickTest dot application. So for automating QuickTest, we use this code with QuickTest dot application, whereas for automating the Excel sheet, we'll use Excel dot application. Okay, so this is OXL is the object name for the object which is created for automating the Excel application. Now we know the hierarchy. So beneath Excel comes the workbook. Okay, so we'll create a workbook object. So O workbook, I name it as O workbook equal to O Excel dot. So if you see the hierarchy, I'm referring this OXL refers to the Excel object dot workbooks dot open. So what this code does is we have created a workbook object, and this code will open a particular workbook, and O workbook will refer to that workbook. So here you have to give the path. Okay, so whatever your path is, wherever you have stored it in the file system, you have to give it over there. And once this is done, the next hierarchy is sheet. So I'll name it as a worksheet. So this is the sheet object O worksheet, and I'll use O workbook dot. Now what am I supposed to do? Once I've opened my workbook, I want access to a particular sheet. So what I'll do is worksheets. Okay, and in bracket, maybe I'm accessing sheet 1, so I'll write sheet 1. Okay, so whatever the name of the sheet you want to access. So now we have reached, if you see, we are following the hierarchy from Excel to workbook to sheet. Now I have access to a particular sheet. So what do I want to do? Once I have access to a particular sheet, say the sheet has some data, name and password. Okay, what I'm teaching you is how QTP accesses data directly from the Excel sheet by automating the Excel sheet using object model. Okay, Now this is a part of a data-driven framework, okay, wherein we need to fetch the data from Excel sheet, and there could be cases wherein we are not using the data table and we are fetching the data from the Excel sheet directly. So in that case, this code will be very useful. So I'll be continuing with my framework, but I'll just explain you, since we are going with the flow. I'll just explain you how to automate Excel sheet. We have already seen how to automate the QTP, and using the same object model, I'll also show you how to automate Notepad, that is how to access data from Notepad. So the name, suppose Shankar, password is Mercury, Neha, password is Mercury, Preetham, password is Mercury. Okay, so this is my data sheet. This is having the data. I'll show the same for Notepad as well as because the data can be in the form of Notepad as well, in the Notepad format as well. You never know. Suppose you're getting a data from the client or any other user. The data could be either in the Excel format or Notepad format. So you have to design your script in that way. So in our case, suppose our data is in, we are assuming that our data is in Excel sheet. Now if you see, we have to we need to access this cells, okay, and according to data driven framework, we'll use one data at a time, that is Shankar. I'll put Shankar Mercury as the name and password, and I'll click on OK button, and the application should open. I'll perform some operation on the application and log out, and again I'll try the same with the second data. So we are using the same script for for different sets of data, okay, for different data values, and this is called data driven framework because the entire framework is driven by data. So how do I access the cells over here? So before going back to the framework structure, I'll explain you the coding part of accessing the workbook from QTP without using data table. Okay, so we have access towards the worksheet. Now the next thing what we have to do is worksheet object dot used range dot select. So what this does is it will select the used range. Now the used range is this in our case, okay.